Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Two Girls, One Closet. This is Drea Montali, and I'm here with my co-host, Deb. Hey, Deb.
Hi. How's it going?
How are you? Good. How are you?
Good. Hanging in.
Well, we're really excited for this episode because it's Earth Week and Earth Days this week. So we have a super special guest. We have Adam Baruchowitz, who is the founder of Wearable Collections, as our guest today. Hey, Adam.
How you doing, Drea?
How's it going?
It's going pretty well, thank you.
Yes.
All things considered.
Yes, we are recording during the coronavirus, and we are all in quarantine. So it's going to definitely be an interesting episode. I'm excited to talk to you about fashion, sustainability, and all that you guys do, and a little bit about the earth because, I think the earth needs a little love right now. So
yeah,
thank you for being here. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and how Wearable Collections came to light?
Yeah, well, really, I kind of always have to tell the founding story as part of describing who I am and in relationship to Wearable Collections. So Wearable Collections is a clothing recycling company based out of New York City. We place bins inside of buildings. We have bins in about 250 buildings in New York City. We collect at the New York City Green Markets. We're the backbone of the Green Market collections. We collect at universities and schools, and basically wherever there is some clothes, we'll figure out a way to collect it. I'll try to make the founding story short, but basically, I was a day trader in 2000, and my partner got hit by a car and was left paralyzed. And that's one part of the story. As a day trader, I also did a little bit of traveling and met a friend who runs a sorting facility. There's a place where you bring used clothes after collected. And he told me about the opportunities of used clothing. And that kind of stuck in my mind. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. He told me about some guys that were leaving his facility with a lot of money per month. And it just stuck in my mind as like a business opportunity, but never went further just because I was a day trader at the time. When my friend was hit by a car and paralyzed, and we were just trying to get him back on his feet, so to speak, I saw a bag being left on my hallway when I lived in Manhattan. And I said, it doesn't really make sense for, a company to come or a charity to come and pick up one bag at a time. And it was left there for a couple of weeks. And I thought, well, what about I grew up on Long Island, and they have these outdoor bins. And, what if we can place a bin inside a building, just like we have bins for plastic and paper, then we can make for efficient collections. And if you had a network of efficient collections, it might make sense to collect clothing that way. And so I asked my building, we placed a bid they were very happy to agree to this, project. And, we tapped into our network of friends, and we got a small group of buildings, about 10, 12, and that was the beginning of Wearable Collections. And it really just started as a project to raise funds for spinal cord research. We kind of grew from there.
Wow. That's so interesting. And it's the reason why Adam and I know each other is because when I started my business Dream Organization and I was helping people declutter their closets and their clothes, I didn't really know what to do with them. There's a few, I live in Astoria, Queens. There's a few different charities here that you can bring clothes to also, but I don't know. I never really trusted or knew what I was doing with stuff. So I had reached out to NYC Grows, I believe, and said, listen, I have a bunch of clothes. What do I do with it? And they said, you need to contact Wearable Collections. They'd be perfect for you to work with. So that's a little bit of history of how we know each other.
You have bins inside gyms, which is awesome for sneakers. That's such a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, everything I do is sort of like a proof of concept. I built a business out of proof of concepts, and there's been a lot of lucky, I say random stuff that's happened. You can't really grow a business without there's hard work in there, but sometimes it takes a little luck and timing. And, I think you can never take that out of the mix. And so, this project started in 2004, 2005, and then I don't know if you guys remember the movie Inconvenient Truth came out, and you know,
I do remember that movie.
Yeah, that was, you know, Vice President, you know, Al Gore, or president that kind of won, but got to take it away from him. For a history lesson. But you know, he created the movie, and that was sort of the mainstream of the idea of love of the climate issue, and you know what we're about to face with climate change. And it struck me that when I saw that movie, well, first of all, I was just like, whoa, I don't want to participate in this economy anymore this way. And second of all, is like what we're doing is kind of green. We're keeping these clothing, not only are we part of this collection system, and you know, and but we're extending the life of these clothing, and by doing that, you're keeping them at a landfill, and what you're doing is kind of green. So not that I'm like a super savvy marketer or anything, but I sort of shifted, you know, this little project into kind of being a green enterprise. And you know, that was pretty early. You know, we called it recycling from the beginning. We're a for-profit that dedicates a portion of our proceeds to our collecting partners. So kind of bringing a lot of transparency, you know, early on to what was happening in a sort of gray and darker kind of industry. And you know, trying to really educate the public on what happens with these items. And something I found along the way is just that a lot of this stuff is very formulaic when it comes to, like, yeah, this is clothing, and this is, you know, keeping clothing out of landfills. But when it comes to materials in general, it's very formulaic. The systems by which, you know, you need like efficient hubs of collections, you know, and basically every material needs that, and people need convenient, efficient hubs of collections. And then, you know, need to be able to connect the dots with the other end of it, the people who are going to process it and reutilize those materials as well.
So what is the process? Like, once the clothes are collected, what do you guys do from there?
So we don't go through the clothing at all. We basically pack our trucks, and then we bring it to sorting facilities, and those are basically the processors. There's a market rate for clothing. It's treated like a commodity, just like plastics or glass or paper, you know. So there's a market rate for that. They pay us that market rate for that, and basically at that point it's off our hands. So like our formula is pretty simple. We need to collect a certain amount of clothes to cover the costs of our business per trip, let's just say, you know, and from there, those sorters or other, they're sometimes called graders, open up the bags, and they go through it, and they will they'll put it into sometimes 200 different categories, whether it's men's, women's, winter, summer, you know, bed, you know, linens, and then there's like even like A, B, C, D, E, which is just like the quality of each of those items. And then, you know, they'll pack them in different containers for different markets where, you know, that their different customers are located.
That's so interesting. And I love that you use the word transparency, because I find that a lot of people don't really know what happens with clothes when you kind of donate them or drop them in bins. Like, I see bins in gas stations all over Brooklyn recently and Queens, and I never noticed them before. So I think it's really great that you guys are so transparent with like what happens, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps the process, you know, like a big part of it is, you know, we're trying to keep items out of the landfill, but a lot of this is like an education process, and, you know, raising the consciousness and awareness of just sort of the value of the waste stream. And that's always been like a core tenet to, like, I guess, my ethos, you know. I mean, like, you know, we're a small business, so a lot of Wearable Collections is Adam's ethos, you know, and so, you know, I don't look at it as just one thing, you know. I look at it as sort of like part of the bigger picture. And I think without people having an understanding of that value, you know, then why should they participate in it? So, like, I think that's been a core thing. And, you know, I majored in economics in college, and I would never imagine myself following this career path, but there's a lot to understanding just global, like economics and the structure of economics, and tying it to the materials that we utilize and consume in order to maybe like bring it back to a better environment and as a result.
Right. And I automatically just started thinking about fast fashion and how it's been such a trending topic lately. And I think a lot more people are more aware of, the environmental risks of fast fashion, and also looking to work with companies that do, take that into consideration, I guess. Are you noticing a big shift in the fashion industry because of, the conversation of sustainability with fashion and textiles now?
Totally. I think, it's crazy because like I said, I started this in 2004. So now we're like 15, 16 years in. And, it's just crazy how long it took, because I've been like thinking about these things, let's just say, for a solid 10, 15 years. And, I was surprised. If one thing, I'm surprised about how long it took, but because other environmental aspects were being outed and being focused on what seemed earlier, but fashion seemed to be really delayed in that. And, the trend just seemed to be going towards fast fashion over the past 10 years. And, some movies came out, some documentaries came out, and it just seemed like in around 2017, 2018, and that seemed to be the beginning, like a sort of tipping point of the beginning of awareness. And, these movies outed the fashion industry as being, whether these numbers are accurate, the second most pollutive industry in the world. And, when it's just like something like that as a headline, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Really? Like that's eye-catching. And it's a gigantic industry, it's a multi-trillion-dollar global industry, so it's not just some like tiny thing. And when you start connecting the dots from like, the labor, the materials, the energy that goes into all this, the transportation, you're like, whoa, you could start, when you start connecting those dots. But it's been an industry that's really benefited from lack of transparency and lack, supply chains, and the industry has really benefited from the world not knowing exactly, what their supply chain was and who's actually created the stuff, because it's been a trend towards like the race to the bottom, like, just who can create these things, cheaper prices, more units to sell higher volume. And I think that's changing. I'm very optimistic about that change, and we'll see how that plays out. But, definitely, 5 years ago, my feed would have nothing in it for sustainable fashion. Maybe it's the same article over and over again. And now every day I'm like, whoa, that sounds kind of cool. That's a new innovation. There's definitely innovations popping left and right. And so I'm actually very highly optimistic about, the future of fashion.
And I wonder how coronavirus and our way of living right now will also affect that as well, because I feel like there are a lot more people who are interested in just kind of like keeping things back to basics and more minimal, and like what you need versus what you want. So
totally. I mean,
yeah, I just wonder.
I don't know. I feel very, I don't like to I'm not like the one I want to like gloat or like be happy about it, but there's definitely like obviously like a shakeout happening in sort of what I like to call like the legacy players, just like the larger players, and that have been around a long time. And typically legacy players have a more difficult time changing systems, or changing the system at a rapid pace doesn't necessarily like benefit them, and don't want to make those investments so quickly. And so I don't know, I'm getting a lot of calls from friends that are furloughed. I know there's a lot of really talented people that really have really great ideas towards sustainability, and I'm hoping that they find themselves on better footing with better organizations that want to push forward on the sustainable tip.
Yep, that would be good and great for our planet.
Yeah, I think it's a very likely outcome. I mean, you never know. You never know because like the stimulus package is coming in, and you never know how these chips fall. Like, but everyone's going to try to keep hold of what they've had, and I just think like this reset could offer one of the best opportunities we'll ever have to sort of rethink the models that we've been existing in, and an opportunity to sort of rapidly shift out of them.
I wonder too, thinking of I've been talking to some of my clients who are also home, and some people are organizing right now. Some people, it's definitely not a priority for them right now. But I wonder if the bins in buildings are either going to be super full because everyone's decluttering and like simplifying or minimizing their life, or are they going to be empty because people are saying, I'm hanging on to everything I have right now, and you never know. You don't know how long we're going to be stuck in our houses for right now, so I can't let anything go. I think it's going to be one extreme or the other.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've definitely gotten a lot of calls of full bins. I think in New York, a lot of people have left this, there was a thinning out of just the population in general from people who, kind of like bailed on the city during this period. So, it would probably be more towards like the vacation era anyway. But, it doesn't take a lot for waste to add up. So if you're in a high rise and there's 300 units in it, it doesn't take many people cleaning out to fill a bin. That was kind of the concept of the idea of wearable collections in the first place, and when you're dealing with a population of 12 million people, there's always something out there. I know this is like, I've been through, because we've been around long enough, like to been through some of these periods, and even, New York very centrically, like this, I'm not saying this is a New York centric issue, but it does seem like New York has kind of been considered ground zero for this in America. Hurricane Sandy was it Hurricane Sandy?
Yeah.
I've been talking to my son a lot about Hurricane Gloria over this, like in 1984. So I'm like, I just kind of threw myself off.
No, Sandy was the recent one.
Yeah. So, that was a period where, like, New York was underwater, and it was a crazy period, right? And we kind of halted for a couple of weeks, and I don't know, there's something I'm able to be like very flexible and come up with ideas. Like, initially I was like, yeah, this is kind of messed up, but I'll figure a way out of it. And like in Hurricane Sandy, I partnered with a friend's moving company. I don't know if you remember, but you couldn't really get gas at the time. So that was like one of the issues. Like, they had like even and odd, like if you had an odd license plate number, you can go for gas one day. And if you had an even, so they're kind of like rationing gas at that time because they weren't able to make like gas deliveries or whatever. And I found, but a lot of people were like donating clothes because like there's always an initial rush of like, that's how people like, I think start there. Like, what can I do in a difficult period? I can give people clothes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like
That's
everyone's
so
calling,
true.
is there a way you can get clothes to people? And it's like, if this stuff is not done efficiently, it's just going to pile up somewhere and basically go to waste. So, efficient distribution is just as important as efficient collection. But like I found a friend who had a moving company, and he was run by biodiesel, his trucks, and he was getting like biodiesel deliveries. Like basically like the way his system was working, that like a biodiesel company was coming and filling up his trucks like weekly. And so I was able to like have like my biggest month ever during Hurricane Sandy, even though my trucks weren't functioning. So I'm very nimble that way. Like, and I always, like I'm kind of like always sort of like a little confident I'll figure a way out of it. And we probably could have like made business, work during this period. But then like obviously there's like lockdowns. That makes it difficult, and then
also buildings probably won't even let people. I mean, I know some of my clients have even said, listen, I'm in the Hamptons for a few months, go to my home and organize. And it sounds tempting, but their doormen aren't letting me in. So
exactly. So you have that, you have workers that don't want to go to work because they don't want to like be on a train, and then frankly, like this is the first time, but like the clients stop, like shipping, like to these ports have stopped, like at least in my industry, so there's really nothing to do, like, because I would have been like, oh, I could do like contactless home pickups, and I could probably like create like a lot of business by doing that. Just leave your bags out in front. You know what I mean? Like, there's a way I can get clothes, I'm sure, during this period. It's still spring, and no matter what, people are programmed to clear closets regardless of whether they be home or not. This is like a changing of season time too, So this is typically like our high season, So, but this one is just like, nope, shut down, and so I've kind of pivoted to conversations for the things that I was planning on doing. I had a lot of big ideas that were about to happen, and still connecting with those groups, and just keeping these big ideas moving forward, and just trying, those big ideas take time for R&D anyway, so just utilizing this time as like R&D, like, is there a way that we can kind of like, get this up and running in a faster way, and like just trying to connect the dots, whether it's just investment or getting that brain power really like churning during this time when, they're having like a bit of downtime, and, can we be part of that sort of pivot to a more green economy?
Are you able to share any of the new projects that you've been working on yet? It's okay if you can. I'm just curious what they are.
I mean, I'm pretty transparent. I don't know how, like, my partners will feel about it, but I don't. I'm not. I won't. No. I don't. When it comes to like all these kind of like things, I'll really like enjoy putting things out in the ether, and just I mean, everything. Like, if you're like in this angle of like sort of trying to do well by doing good, I think like sometimes it's like it's okay if someone does well by doing better than you. If they take an idea, do like, it always comes down to execution, doesn't it? I mean, like, ideas are sort of like a dime a dozen. So like, I'm pretty confident that like, the structure that we have set up and the relationships that we've built over time will kind of persevere over someone hearing an idea, and if they do a better job and like it takes a step forward, that's like what this is all about, right? Like, I mean, like you can't be, I don't know. Well, we're known to be competitive in business and stuff like that. Like, I mean, when your business is like for the environmental benefits, like if you're in solar and someone comes up with a more efficient like solar panel, it's like, you got to like tip your cap to them. I mean, yeah, you might be out of business, but like, it's still, you're probably pushing for like, a transition to solar economies, and that's going to help, so
right. It's for the greater good.
Yeah, I think there's got to be, ultimately there probably should be that in business in general, right? So I think I'm kind of befuddled that more people don't put that. I mean, whatever, people got to survive, so I understand that aspect, but I really do hope that people utilize this time to be like, whoa, I could lose my job at the drop of a hat. The security that I'm imagining that I thought I had can be taken away from me immediately. This comfortable job just furloughed me like that. You know what I mean? It's just like, maybe I should be doing something that builds a little resilience into what I do. Like, and I believe like sustainability is the future. I believe that like every company's got to bake sustainability into what they're doing. And whether you're a designer, a marketer, I think that like, it's just such crazy brain power that's spent like selling products that we don't even need. Yeah, I just I would love to see this being part of like a larger transition and shift to that. Like I've always said, like, because we talk about like sustainability departments and stuff like that. Like, it's like they have one person writing reports in like these big companies. These like global conglomerates, and they have like one person. Like, I think it's changing now, but think about that, the amount of like marketing dollars that same company spends. So like, until like businesses see that tying sustainability in is like a form of marketing. Like people are going to want to, it's going to change the consumers' habits, and it's going to sell more of their products because they've taken this stance. Which I think is happening, but yeah, we'll see.
And I even think, I mean, just like from talking to my clients, I think there's also a sense of guilt people feel now about buying stuff that you don't know if they care about the environment at all, because it's been such a big conversation. So I really think a lot of brands need to kind of change over to being more transparent. Like I even know H&M had a little drama a couple of years ago, and they've sort of they had a lot. But now, like, they really needed to kind of change their business, and they added, now you can donate clothes to them and they'll give you a discount. They're looking more into sustainable fabrics. So I think
100%.
It's really interesting. I think it is something that people do care for a lot more. So.
Right. And that's what, people are like, what can I do? Like whatever, like on a panel.
Exactly.
Like people like, what can I do? And it's like, I think people just can't underestimate the power of the consumer and their ability to, to change what companies offer them. And I think that, I think that's in the midst of shifting, but like, once again, it's just like the speed of the transition we're trying to accelerate that. Right. So, we just talked about like one of the projects, and like, so I've been like obsessed with the idea of like circularity for the past, since I've heard of the term.
What does it mean?
Yeah. So, I guess you can make the definition of, and I'm not really great with like definitions. I'll give you a loose, the linear economy is kind of that, like, was what we currently operate under, which is just kind of designed, produced, consumed, disposed. That, not much thought of like afterlife is taken into the way things are designed. And so a circular economy is when products are designed for the utility of the materials when a consumer may be finished with it. So, it's thinking about like the design, thinking about how it can be broken down, and then thinking about how it can be sort of like re-injected, either as the same good or maybe a different type of good. But it's taking all that into consideration and sort of like this sort of endless loop of the material being used over and over again. Like, when you yeah, most people don't think too much about the materials that are around them, but like really everything around us was created by some form of thing that was either grown, harvested, or created in a lab. And so when the more you start thinking about it, the more you start understanding the value of what went into it. And from a consumer standpoint and from a corporate standpoint, of like like the more we all sort of collectively start caring about this stuff, the more innovation we can have. So in terms of fashion, when you think about just like a t-shirt or a sweatshirt, that the sweatshirt you're wearing, it's, what is it made of? It's made with, let's just say that this one is 100% cotton. What went into the creation of the cotton? It's like the cotton, a lot of water goes into cotton, a lot of pesticides go into cotton. Then, so you think about, that's whenever you see one of those images, like, I'm not even sure the number, but like 2,000 liters of water went into that pair of jeans. I'm sorry if that is wrong. Like, I'm not really amazing.
Yeah, just examples.
Yeah.
If I wasn't searching, like, so anyone who's listening, search, Google it. But there's some sort of like big number that goes into one pair of jeans. And so it doesn't really make sense for those pair of jeans to be worn, one lifetime and then just thrown into a landfill. When, like, when you contemplate all of the rigors of production that went into those pair of jeans. So, people are working on ways on the back end to either mechanically, which would be to shred and then sort of like repurpose these materials, or chemically, which means they're trying to figure out some sort of formula that can like chemically break these down so they can be sort of re-extruded as another fiber. And there's all these different kind of things happening with, and I mean, I find it really exciting. And, you know, I never really, I didn't fail, but I didn't do quite that. You know, I took chemistry in college. I took one course and I was done with that. Happy to be done with chemistry. But like,
Same.
I find myself, yeah, you know, like, but here I am, you know, in my 40s, you know, running like a clothing recycling company. And I found myself at this, there was a conference at the New York Academy of Science. And it was just like, you know, people were talking about how they were changing the ways, you know, whether it's water repellency or flame retardancy or like how to dye materials with less water. And it's just like, wow, like, you know, there are really like there are answers for all these issues. And so ever since I went to that conference, I've kind of been really obsessed with trying to think of like different ways. And one of the biggest problems with clothing is like all the blends that happen. You know, they you know, this polyester cotton blend, and there's no real there are starting to be developed like optical sorting ways of kind of like, if we just knew it was all cotton, we could figure out what to do with cotton. If we knew it was all polyester, we could do it. But it comes in all this mishmash of blends, and that makes it a little bit more complicated to come up with another product at the end of it. You know, what you get is you shred it and you press it, and you can like turn it into carpet padding or acoustic dampening things for cars, and you know, maybe the stuffing for mattresses, just different like, you know, kind of low grade fiber uses. But people are developing different innovations that are, you know, they're coming up with innovations to utilize the materials as is, and, you know, use higher contents of these recycled. And then as the consumer starts demanding more and more recycled content in their goods, you know, it puts a different sort of like economics to the whole thing. And so I found a company that can make clothing from a high blend of post-consumer. So there's pre-consumer, which is from the factory floor, and then there's post-consumer, which is this sort of hybrid of materials that come in through my collections. And so maybe I could just circle back to like, when we collect and we bring it to a sorting facility, about 50% of the goods that we collect, this is just like kind of like industry standard, can be reused as secondhand. And the other 50% is either going to be cut up into rags or used for these low grade fiber products. So all of it could sort of like be reused in one form or another. But there's not a whole lot of value placed on that second 50%. So it's the reuse of secondhand that sort of drives the economics of clothing collection. So I've always been thinking about like, what about that other 50% that kind of, it almost like a negative value. Like it's less than putting in landfills, because putting things in landfills costs money as well. There's transportation and the landfilling tipping fee. So these big sorters, they're dealing with millions and millions of pounds of this, and really it can be turned into products, but there's not value placed on that. So I'm always kind of obsessed with like, well, what if we could change the economics of that? Then it changes the economics of collecting, because it changes the value of the entire load, because now it's looked at as like a raw material versus just what can be used as secondhand. There's plenty of people who are figuring out what to do with the secondhand clothes. You know, there's re-commerce, there's ThredUps of the world, exactly. There's eBays. You know, there's millions of places but that doesn't really intrigue me that part, even though like there's probably much more money to be made from the stuff that could be turned into clothes. But I'm more obsessed with that other 50%, the stuff that maybe could be used as a raw material that can sort of be re-injected. And if we change that, then we change the economics of the entire loads. And, you know, from a company that I collect 2.5 million pounds, you know, a year, it's all you have to do is change the price point of a couple of pennies, and you're changing the economics tremendously of your business. So I linked up with a company that can make apparel with post-consumer waste. And we're kind of like about to launch the product. I received the samples. I was waiting all winter for the samples, and just received the samples like a week before. I had to like sort of ditch town. So, you know,
oh, man.
I was gonna say, can we see him?
Yeah, exactly. You know, well, I mean, I do have some here, but you know, it's pointless for now. You know,
right.
But like, this could be our stay tuned, and you know, we can talk about that.
Episode 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Episode 2.
If anyone's interested.
I'm sure people will be. I was even just thinking of like Madewell. I donate jeans to them sometimes, and they turn like the denim into housing insulation.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I thought was really cool.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
And it is cool. It is cool. You know, I mean, that's the interesting thing is like, so, you know, it's like wearable collection. You're just clothing recycling. You're just garbage, man. Like in a way, like we are waste managers, you know, like we place bins inside of buildings, we collect clothes. So I'm never really like, I'm kind of like, I'm like super anti-fashion industry in general, like my whole life. Like, so I never could imagine myself being part of like a clothing line or anything like that. But the whole idea of this clothing line is to show what's possible, you know, that we can like, and on a whole, like that we can like make clothing with a percentage of post-consumer waste, first of all, you know, so I want to show that. But on another line, I want to, you know, like Wearable Collections is an interesting position because we have, you know, thousands of collection hubs around New York City. So, you know, if we were to start this line of clothing, we also could tell the people that purchase this clothing, when you're done with it, please bring it to one of our, you know, collection hubs, and we can do the process all over again. So we're in a unique place to talk about circularity. So any of these companies, and as more and more companies come online to want to join along this circular path, a lot of them are finding, well, how do we get our stuff back? And you had mentioned the H&M program. You know, it can be through the retailer, you know, the retail locations. And it could also be through very unique collaborations where, you know, with a company like Wearable Collection. So there's I want to like kind of put Wearable Collections on the forefront of this, you know, circularity talk. And I think we're well positioned to do some great stuff with it. I was really excited about 2020.
I know it's been
everyone
was.
Yeah.
But
well,
listen, it's just a little delayed, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's all. We press pause.
We press pause.
I know,
like
and
said.
frankly, you know, I would sacrifice some of my programs for some of the environmental benefits that are taking place just with this pause. You know, frankly, a pause is a big part of the raising of awareness. You know, and it's a big part of. There's probably a lot less carbon emissions happening this past month than I don't have the data yet, but I'm imagining that cities' airs are cleaner than it's ever been with less cars 100%. On the road.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, all of this is sort of like a balance. And I think that, you know, there's a bit of balance being forced upon us that's probably benefiting the earth via this slowdown. And I don't know, like I hope we can carry some of it over. I think I'm optimistic that we can.
Right. I think I know they were showing a lot of graphics on the news from China that just showed how drastically their air pollution has decreased. It's like, oh, you can see clouds again and blue skies again in China. I don't know how accurate they are, but I know, you know, like I definitely have been seeing that on the news a lot. So
I know it's like we're living this era of fake news. You can't believe like anything anymore.
Right.
But
everyone's skeptical.
But you can like, this is where like intuition and common sense kind of comes into play. I mean, like people are staying at home. You know, they're not. You know, they're not driving around. Like, what causes pollution? Factories are shut down right now. I mean, like, well, you know, like, so, like, you know, like, less buildings are using less energy right now. You can just like if you just use your
sense.
common sense to
Right.
what's happening, I think we're definitely like pulling less resources from the earth at this moment, and I think it's showing us the possibilities, you know, that we can slow down, and I mean, a lot of this craziness with the, you know, it's just, I mean, we're just sort of for 40 years with globalization, you know, been like just considered consumers, you know, unconscious consumers. And I think that it's been slowly changing, but I think that anyone who's just taking a moment to like reflect can be like, wow, like he's thinking like what I need and don't need at this moment, you know? And I think that should and could carry over. You know, I think when you make that next purchase, like, do I really need? Will that change? Like, people are so cynical about humans, and you know, oh, they're just gonna go like right back, right? They're gonna go right back to the way they were, right? But I'm less cynical when it comes to that. Like, you know, I'm more optimistic, and I think if we give people solutions, if we give them options, you know, then they choose the healthier one, you know. And I always say this, like I'm not like this kind of tree hugging environmentalist, you know. I just think that we can align our needs to the environment, like to live more harmoniously through this.
Right. And it's interesting that you said that, because I even think of cooking. My husband and I, we live in Astoria, Queens. I mean, I have 15 different ethnicities of food on my block, and we eat takeout so much. We've never cooked this much in our life, and we're not even making anything crazy, but like I physically just feel so much better. And I didn't realize it because I am always on the go. I'm in the car a lot. I stop to grab a slice of pizza, but just cooking breakfast, lunch, and dinner at home, like I don't even eat breakfast anymore. It's really just like lunch and dinner. And I feel like just so much better.
And you notice how much money it costs every time we go out.
Well, I mean, grocery store shopping has not been cheap right now. I feel like they've been jacking up prices a bit, but
I think you're probably saving money on food.
100%. I think for sure. I feel I haven't used my debit card all week for anything.
I think you're saving money on everything. Exactly.
On everything.
Yeah. You know,
I haven't swiped in weeks. You know,
that's a huge thing. You know, it's like, you know, we're just, you know, growth, GDP. You know, we're just like these kind of like data points on like keeping all of this stuff going, and you know, I don't know, like a giant awakening. It doesn't behoove the grander economy, you know, that like we're like supposed to think is the thing that we're all got to be part of to keep the economy going. But like, you know, we're surviving.
Right.
I mean, honestly, like I know, like it's easy to say this, like I'm sheltered in in a space, and I know some people are going through like a much more difficult time through this period, you know. So I shouldn't be so flippant about, you know, saying it that way, but you know, there's a lot of positives to take from this this difficult time.
Agreed.
I saw a meme the other day that was like, I can't wait to hear the words, "Do you want to start a tab again?" I'm like, no, I don't want to hear those words. I don't want to go out.
But one of the memes like I've loved from this period is that the one that was like, I mean, I my feeds are full of like environmental and like climate stuff, you know. But
I'm memes.
Well, just the one that like, you know, global warming or climate crisis could use like the same PR firm that coronavirus is used, and it's you know, it's just like and I do think that it's important to like, you know, to figure out a way to really kind of bridge this era into that, because, you know, even heading into this, you know, as it was happening, you could see it coming. As a person who thinks about the climate crisis like almost every, like, you know, like waking moment, who I have young children, I want them to live I wanted to experience the world in a way that we have, you know, and you know, part of that thought process is like a self-sustaining place high in the mountains, away from like the oceans. You know, I like and like it's not like doomsday. It's just you know, like when I watch like $1 billion development go up on the water, and like I'm just kind of like, what are these guys thinking? You know, in Miami, I'm just like, this is just crazy. But you know, I guess I just like I don't know whether they're blind or like and it's kind of like, you know, there are these two parties that are just like, this is happening or deny. And, you know, I think we're all like in agreement that something's happening, you know, in some form or another. And there's also like, well, if it's happening, what can we do about it? But like, I don't think, you know, I think no matter what, like, and that's why I was just circle back to like what I was saying about not being like a tree hugger. It's just like, whether it's fixing the more giant problem is one thing, you know, but it's all about like ripple effect, you know, and it's these little things you can do that can kind of spread into bigger like effects. And like it's just like this common sense stuff. It's like, would you rather like live in a place that has less pollution or not? We breathe. Like cleaner air is good for us. You know, would you rather be around like polluted water, or would you rather swim in clean water? If like we had the opportunity and the know-how to live in a cleaner place, why would we not make the option? This has nothing to do with saving the world. You know, so it's not about that. It's just like, it's about making these tiny nudges to a cleaner world. You know?
I always think people are scared of change. And you know, even switching from, let's say, cars that use gas to electric cars, just like the question is always, well, where are you going to charge the car? What are you going to do? Go a few miles and then have to charge your car? It's like, you need to do that with gas anyway. It's just, you can't drive endlessly with your car on gas. Like you have to stop and get gas. So
but then there'll be someone who'll be like,
that idea of change that people get nervous about, I think. But
I think people get nervous, but also there are so many forces. There's so many like systemic forces. And so it's like, then there'll be someone who might say that like the lithium battery in the car takes so much, you know, to like harvest that it's like actually worse than the typical car. And then it's like, what that's not factoring is like, yes, it's a new innovation, you know, and like we haven't like figured out like, so to break through, you know, sometimes you have to like go backwards to go forward a little, and like, so that might be possible, like, and like all these things are at like different price points because like we have this already legacy system in place, you know. And so I think that like, which tailpipe would you rather suck? An electric car? I mean, like, it's like,
that is the thing I also hear. It's like, what do you think happens to the battery? It's like, I don't know yet. We kind of need to figure that out, but it's still an option that's worth exploring.
Yeah, you have to
and putting resources towards, you know. You know, I mean, unless like we all put resources towards it, then it won't happen, or it's gonna happen slowly at a pace that they could still milk the old system, and then finally, when the consumer like demand, like if we all demanded it, you know, but like it takes time.
Right.
Transitions
well,
take time.
I always think and admire that you're so ahead of the game when it comes to this conversation. I mean, we thought about this in 2004, and people really, I think, just started talking about it last year in like mainstream, you know, media and stuff. So I think you're doing a great job with that. So I really trust anything you do when it comes to being innovative with this. So
Adam for president.
Adam for president.
Nah.
Adam and Al Gore for president. You can be the
so I prefer to do it from behind the scenes.
So why don't you tell us and anyone listening, where can people find you? How can they set up a bin? Where are you located? So if people want to reach out, they know how to get in touch with you guys. Well,
first of all, www.wearablecollections.com has all the info on our company. If you're in a building, you can request a bin for your building. We operate at 31 weekly green markets, covering a lot of New York, not all of New York, unfortunately, but a lot of New York. We do home pickups. You can request a home pickup. We do have minimums because we do have to be efficient both environmentally and economically. So, if you're further out, we need to collect more per trip. We also work with corporations and help them institute take-back programs. We help them with residual inventory, the damages, returns, overstock, all this kind of thing, which I fear there's going to be a real glut of inventory. There's going to be store closings. They're still getting shipments while there are store closings. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of, in my feed, there's a lot of chatter just about big companies not paying for orders that they had. And so
I saw that.
Yeah, there's going to be a tremendous impact just in the whole supply chain. So sorry to bring that up talking about Wearable Collection again, but yeah, so
No.
we work with companies as well, consulting and helping them navigate these difficult times.
That's great. Well, thank you for being our guest. At the end of each episode, we kind of do either a game or a question from Instagram that someone sent us. And I do have an Instagram question that I wanted to ask today. And a few people have asked this. What do you do with like home linens and towels?
Home linens and towels are very welcomed in our collections. Like I told you before, most of it is destined for reuse. So really the only thing we have problems with, is the stuff that might have like feathers in it, right? So like pillows, typically people use pillows until they're really stained with sweat.
Right.
So while some people may have clean pillows, it's just easier to say no when you're a very public facing company. But no, linens and towels are very welcome. A lot of them have very high cotton content, and so cotton is very welcomed in the recycling and reuse industry.
That's good to know. I know for me, I always bring stuff to animal hospitals and animal shelters because in Astoria there's a few, and if someone has like extra sheets and stuff, if you bring them to animal hospitals, you can they use it to like line the crates for the animals post operation and surgeries.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I always would encourage people to try to find like even the most localized, like someone in your area building that has need, but unfortunately we consume more than that need, and there needs to be markets to handle that.
Right. Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thank you again for being on our show. We hope to have you again when your new product launches come back. We can talk about this for days. So
yeah. Well, hopefully if you're ever creating swag, we can do something together. So
yeah. Oh, that's a great idea.
Definitely.
That's definitely next on my list. That was on my 2020 goals, is like some dream organization merch, or maybe we can do some 2 Girls, 1 Closet merch. So
yeah,
that would be fun.
Well, we'll be there for you, hopefully.
Awesome. All right, guys. So we will be back again next week. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you like what you heard today. Share on social media with your friends. And if you have any questions for us, shoot us a DM on the gram at 2 Girls, 1 Closet podcast. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.